My name is Samantha Stimpson. I am the founder and CEO of SLS360, which is a research and consultancy firm specialising in equity, diversity, and inclusion within the arts and music education sector. I've been working with Sound Connections now since August last year, when I was asked to co-deliver a Music Mark staff CPD session on embedding inclusion and diversity in your teacher practice with Abby Demore. Since then, I've continued to work with Sound Connections as a freelancer and have delivered training for hubs, and also was part of the advisory group for the fantastic 2-day sitting that was Inclusive Practice in Action. More recently, I've supported Sound Connections with their hub consultations as part of Sound Connections work with Arts Council England and Music Mark. So following the death of George Floyd, a group of London music education hubs met to discuss how they could shape a positive response to the issue of racism in music education and form an individual and collective response. They proposed that long-term action be taken and research within the workforce to identify specifically how they could instigate real change and explore diversity and representation. And the research was also an opportunity to conduct an audit of the diversity of the workforce and also find out about people's racial attitudes, beliefs, lived experiences, especially those who identify as Black, Asian, mixed, or a person of colour from the global majority. So I began with a theory of change, which is a really useful process to help capture the long-term intended impact of the research outcomes and the activities and any assumptions before we start, and also decide on the best research methodology to take. The approach I took was to start with collecting quantitative data, which is monitoring data on ethnicity and gender of the workforce, in order to provide a clear understanding of what the current context was like, and produce data to inform target setting and track progress. Because essentially, we can't change what we can't measure. And I think it's really important for organisations to be collecting and analysing data regularly in order to measure success. It also highlighted where underrepresentation exists and where most groups that are most affected are, and also if it's prevalent at all levels. I then collected qualitative data through interviews with Black, Asian and senior leaders and surveys to all staff to just gain a greater understanding of how people feel about race, their experiences of racism, attitudes and behaviours. And I also explored how different groups are affected by public instances of racism, such as the murder of George Floyd, and feelings of belonging to find out the culture within hubs and begin to identify the needs of any specific groups. So key findings from the report found that the workforce was underrepresented in terms of ethnicity and race, with only 14% of the workforce identifying as Black, Asian, mixed or a person of colour from the global majority, compared to the London population of 43%, which is due to grow to 50% in the next 10 years. The lowest representation appeared at leadership level, where 87% of the music education hub in London leaders identified as white. So there's clearly a lack of role models of colour at the top. Also, 1 in 4 who identified as Black experienced racism either within their hub or within the school that they worked in. However, the majority of people who witnessed racism identified as white, and the level of allyship is really high among that group. Many people stating that they weren't afraid to speak up and challenge when they have witnessed racist behaviour. And although underrepresented with regard to ethnicity and race, the London Education Hub's workforce was, however, found to be representative with regard to the gender balance. And overwhelmingly, those who responded to the Belonging and Inclusion survey actually stated that they felt a strong sense of belonging at the workforce. So I think one action that people should take from the report once they've read it and shared it with their SLT and other employees, and really just started to talk about what they've learned, how they feel about the sector and their own organisation based on the report, is to actually take action not wait for the right time or get bogged down with the details of a diversity and inclusion strategy, but just identify one action and take it and start there. And then after that action, then take another one and maybe another one. And they don't have to be grand actions, actually. It's amazing how small actions can actually have a really big impact. So I guess to ensure that the work continues, I would encourage all organisations to step forward and actually share the action that they plan to take. And from my perspective, to ensure that this work does continue, I will be continuing to work with Music Mark to help them basically support the sector to be a bit bold and a bit brave when it comes to their commitment to diversity, equity and inclusion, and make sure that we can turn talk into action and truly be a force for change.